60 years ago, the dead nearly conquered the earth. Spilling over the haunted shores of Thanatos, they quickly established footholds on 3 continents, and only the allied might of the sister empires, elves from Emeros, dwarves from Rubicos, and orcs from Auros, could hold them at bay. After 3 decades of hard fighting, the Night Wars abruptly ended. The dead ceased their advance, and the wearied armies went home. The land they fought over, however, was despoiled and desolate, and all those that once lived there had no home to return to. For most of Ondune, the wars were over. For some unlucky few, the wars were only beginning. Welcome back to Previously On. It has been a while. This is a recap show where I kind of talk through what's going on in my home game. I do a little summary in the beginning and then kind of some post-game analysis. This episode, though, I'm going to summarize the campaign that I'm playing in thus far and kind of give you the lowdown on the characters. We've been playing for a while, so there's a lot to cover. So this is mainly going to be the kind of catch-up story so far episode, but then going forward week after week, it'll be much more in-depth and detailed on each individual session and how I think they went. This is set in Ondune, which is the same world as All Hail Yogg and Helm and Crown, my upcoming Dwarven campaign. So if you're a fan of my work, you might recognize some of the names and the places from streams and podcasts that I've made. The campaign is called The Menagerie, and it follows an unlucky mercenary company struggling to make a name and a living for themselves in the aftermath of a catastrophic war against the undead. Yes, it was definitely inspired by both the Black Company and the Chain of Acheron. References to both will abound. In my campaign, the characters are high-ranking officers in a less-than-successful mercenary company led by a famous hero of the Night Wars. Let's meet them. We're going to start with an NPC. Chimera is the company's commander and the central NPC of the campaign. She's a heavy-hearted, hard-drinking orcish veteran. She fought tooth and nail to defend her homeland in the Night Wars, only to discover her homeland obliterated in the aftermath. For the past 30 years, she's commanded her company, the remnants of her battered unit, in conflicts on 3 continents, but just can't seem to catch a break. Both of Chimera's sons are actually player characters in the campaign. Umber, a swaggering orc barbarian with a beer gut and a big smile, is her eldest and arguably her favorite. Like many barbarians, Umber likes to fight and he likes to fuck, but he's no bloodthirsty savage. Instead, he's a merry goofball who is surprisingly supportive of those he cares about. He wields no signature weapon, preferring to grab whatever sword or axe or spear is lying around. Played by my friend, Steven. Chimera's younger son, Griffin, lives in Umber's shadow. A half-orc and a slayer, my campaign's version of the Blood Hunter, Griffin is dour and serious and everything that Umber is not. Bound by his word and his sense of honor, Griffin cares for the company and its reputation most of all. He never quite earned his mother's approval in the same bluff way that his half-brother did, but the two remain very close despite their different parentage. Griffin's greatest weapon is his lycanthropy, capable of shifting into a wolfish hybrid, though like most werewolves, he struggles to contain his inner beast. Played by my friend, Cody. Perhaps Chimera's oldest comrade, Remoraz, keeps the company together with both hands. An elven bard and a sword dancer, he joined his nation's army on a lark when the Night Wars began, and fell in with Chimera's unit when his was destroyed. They fought together for years, Rem and the commander, and saw many horrors, but when the fighting ended they drifted apart, owing to some bad blood between them. Remoraz practices a unique elven fighting style called the Vai Udariad, or the Way Without Hands, which involves acrobatically rolling a long-bladed sword over one's shoulders and neck. Played by my wife, Hallie. Lastly, there's Mouse. An unlikely member of the commander's tent, Mouse is a kobold rogue and a sneak thief that the party adopted after they accidentally sacked the wrong city. Mouse was never raised amongst other kobolds and is still a little feral, occasionally requiring socialization lessons. Mouse is deadly, though, with dagger and shortbow, often appearing from nowhere to deliver the killing blow. Played by my friend, Kate. These 4 mercenaries comprise the commander's tent, Chimera's inner circle of advisors, and the most capable members of her army. It's the tent who are tasked with steering the company, and occasionally their incompetent commander, through the perils and pitfalls of each contract that they take. And that is where our campaign begins. Destitute, demoralized, and disgraced, the menagerie was licking its wounds in the rainy city of Koza when, before anyone could stop her, their commander signed a contract with a wraith. Turns out that wraith was a messenger from Vhakizla, the world's first Dracolich, and ruler of her selfsame nation located deep in the spoils. To reach this undead realm, they hired a pirate, Zelene Silvers of the Silver Saber, but unable to pay, offered the captain an unspecified favor at a future date. No sooner does the company arrive at the river entrance to Vhakizla, however, than they find it blockaded by the Church of the Sixfold Faith. As an undead abomination, the church opposes Vhakizla and is attempting to strangle her trade. When initial negotiations go bad, the mercenaries convince the pirates to help them and launch a surprise attack against the blockade, subduing it in short order. Bidding farewell to Zelene Silvers, they enter Vhakizla and get their first glimpse at the despoiled nation. This deep in the spoils, the very land is desecrated, all the plants and animals undead, even the river water lies stagnant and is thick with black bloat, a virulent wasting disease that rots you from the inside out. They pass through the crumbled city of Isla, where a tiny human population is ruled over by the undead. When they reach Vhak, the capital city, they meet the Lich Queen herself, a ghastly undead horror masquerading as a living dragon. You see, Vhakizla had a problem. The previous ruler of her nation, the vampire Califar, was still at large and fomenting rebellion somewhere within her nation. To this end, she tasked the menagerie to both track down the vampire and also to quell the Sanguine, the fanatical cult that he developed in the city of Isla. Taking a unit of soldiers with them, the commanders tend to travel to Isla to quash this rebellion, but found the task much more difficult than they had anticipated. Ritual murders, drug trafficking, and workers' riots plagued them, until Sturge, the company's intelligencer, unearthed a lead on Califar's hiding place. While Sturge marshaled the rest of the company, the party had several adventures in the haunted city of Isla, defeating a bat-like Brukalok, staving off a black bloat infection amongst the soldiers, and contending with Califar's trio of vampire brides. A particularly ill-fated raid ended in disaster when, during a battle with Califar's cultists, Griffin swam down a bottomless well of blood after dropping his sword and disappeared, presumed dead. Disheartened by this defeat, the remaining officers went to pursue Sturge's lead, only to discover that this too was a bust. Summoned before Vhakizla to explain themselves, they accidentally stumbled on a conspiracy within the Dracolich's court and exposed her military advisor as a secret vampire spawn loyal to Califar. Gathering their complete force, they decided to march into the Ghostmire, following a rumor that the vampire might be lurking in a ruined city in the midst of the swamp. After a long march, they arrived in the ruined metropolis of Akis, its waters turned to blood, and ghostly armies defending its borders. The menagerie fought a string of fierce battles against ghostly warriors, exsanguinated mummies, and Califar's few remaining brides as they gained ground toward the Summer Palace. All the while, they heard the screams of their companion, Griffin, still alive, but tortured within an inch of his life. In the Summer Palace, they were confronted with the horrible truth. Califar had somehow merged with the swamp's haunted fog and sublimated himself into a miles-wide vampiric mist. After a dire battle, they destroyed the giant draconic statue the mist was inhabiting and managed to dispel him for a time. A hasty search of the palace revealed Griffin inside an Iron Maiden, nearly drained of all his blood. With the Sanguine crushed and Califar defeated, their contract in Vhakizla was completed. Their next contract would see the menagerie voyage clear across the world to the reclusive dwarven kingdom of Khûm. Here they would assist the beleaguered queen and famous dragon slayer Dunya Dragonbane to hunt down the last red worms that plagued the kingdom. As they crossed the world, they visited foreign ports to recruit more mercenaries. While convalescing from his torment, Griffin accidentally received a strange letter intended for Sturge, the company's intelligencer, that implied that she was working to sabotage the menagerie on behalf of a rival mercenary company. Upon arriving in the frozen kingdom of Khûm, they met the queen's retinue, including her mumbling squire Makhem the Meek, and learned of the troubles plaguing the dwarven people. Not merely dragon attacks, but also their old friend Black Bloat, and an ambitious church movement known as the Mysteryarchy that opposed the queen's every move. The mercenaries, meanwhile, were gobsmacked by the dwarven marvels that they saw. The underground transit, known as the Stoneway, the massive monuments, and the arresting sight of the dwarven capital, hollowed out of a mighty mountain. They were likewise gobsmacked when they realized that they weren't the only mercenary company approached for this contract. Indeed, their old rival, the Iron Word, was also there in True Throne, awaiting Dunya's decision. Commander Chimera has long beef with Yorgos of Nair, the Iron Word's shifty commander, and sparks fly when the two of them are jointly interviewed by the rambunctious Queen Dunya, each making a case for why their company better deserves the contract. Before she can make a decision, however, the Mysteryarchy announces that, by an act of Congress, all funding for Dunya's latest adventure has been pulled. She cannot pay either company. That night, it is revealed that Sturge was working for Yorgos, and what's more, that Yorgos is Griffin's human father. He admits his responsibility for sabotaging the menagerie's intel, claiming that it was towards the goal of driving Chimera into joining the Iron Word, but Griffin storms away before he hears another word. Angered about traveling all this way for nothing, the menagerie is about to depart when they are met by Dunya's posse outside the capital, and she makes a radical proposal. Even though they lack the church's blessing, she offers to pay the mercenaries with a portion of the hordes of both dragons they slay. They are quickly agreed, and debate which dragon they should pursue first. Tyrodax, the Wormling, a young and impetuous dragon, or Zoraska, the Red Matron, his ancient and deadly mother. In the end, they split their force, sending the commander's tent and Dunya after the younger dragon, while the main bulk of the army heads to Snowperch, a dwarven stronghold in the north, known for its massive mountaintop ballista. En route to slay the dragon, Umber and Dunya strike up a budding romance. Their attempt to slay Tyrodax goes sideways, however, when a Mysteryarchy army marches on his lair, hoping to seize the queen and prevent her dragon-slaying crusade. While the party manages to fool the Mysteryarchy long enough to surprise and slay the dragon, they are eventually captured and hauled away to the Sanctum in Stone. Zoraska, meanwhile, arrives to swear vengeance against her son's killer, but the dwarves hide underground to avoid her wrath. At Dunya's suggestion, the party seizes a chance to escape and manages to elude their captors as they run back to their army. But, via magical sending, Dunya suggests that they reach out to Yorgos and see if he will spring her from Mysteryarchy custody for a share of the dragon's treasure. The party reluctantly does this, but then hurries back to the menagerie, only to discover that things are in disarray there too. The dwarves of Snowperch, Clan Bracebow, are deeply in the Mysteryarchy's pocket and want nothing to do with these foreign mercenaries on their doorstep, and thus refuse them entry. What's more, kobold raiders from the nearby forest, thought to be Zoraska's hatchlings, harass the encamped army every night. With the aid of inexplicable giant eagles, the party reaches the mountaintop fortress of Snowperch, befriends the Thane's artificer wife, Kosava Bracebow, but makes enemies of the local priest, Brother Sorav. Marshalling the dwarven clan around them, they overturn the Thane's edict that prevents the menagerie's entry, and then allow their army inside. Days later, Dunya herself arrives, in the company of Yorgos, but Chimera now refuses him entry. At a war council, Dunya lays out her plan. Lure the dragon to Snowperch, then use Kosava's ballista to shoot her out of the air with dragon-slaying arrows, and then take the fight to her on the ground. Their strategy is interrupted, however, when they discover that their drinks are poisoned with cockatrice venom, and Dunya is petrified. A frantic night of investigation reveals that the Thane and Brother Sorav conspired to poison the queen. Griffin, enraged at this, throws Brother Sorav from the mountaintop, while a ghostly dwarven judge arrives to pass a sentence on Thane Zazeb. 100 years of petrification. To lift the curse on Dunya, however, they must turn to Yorgos and his company's cleric, for which he asks only 10 minutes of Chimera's time, that he might make the case for his retirement and Griffin's inheriting of the company. With Dunya now unpetrified, the company launches a quick expedition into the Firewood to capture and interrogate a kobold. The cunning guerrilla fighters almost prove too much for the commander's tent, but at the end, they capture Zerk, feral as a wildcat, and Mouse takes over their care. After much ado, the battle with Zoraska arrives. Kosava's ballista strikes true, bringing the dragon to the ground, and the trap is sprung. During the fight, the dragon heaps all her punishment on Dunya, burning her body with several breath weapons, and only Umber's intervention manages to save her life. In the end, Zaraska is slain, the menagerie victorious, and Chimera resolved to retire after this contract. But first, they must go collect the gold from Zaraska's lair in the firewood. Dunya, her body horribly burned, is too weak to accompany them. As they march through the forest, Mouse begins to question their life in the company and how little they know of their own kobold people. When they arrive at Cloudfall, the crashed sky castle where Zaraska made her lair, they discover it too occupied by kobolds. Chimera uses this opportunity to test Griffin, giving him command of the army, but when his sneak attack backfires, she reconsiders retiring just yet. Instead, Mouse appeals to the kobolds, claiming the draconic name Kuatsada and swaying Zaraska's brood to follow them instead. Inside the castle, they find a profound wealth of dragon's treasure, all of which must be hauled out of Khûm. Before they can return to Snowperch, laden with dragon's gold, Mouse departs the company, off to live amongst the kobolds of the firewood. When they reunite with Dunya, she and Umber finally share a bed together. After she reveals that the dragon's fire has reshaped her skeleton so much that without great magic, she will never walk or fight again. Their contract done, the menagerie prepares to leave Khûm, escorting the queen back to Truthrone and a reckoning with the Mystriarchy. To their surprise, however, they are accompanied by Kosava and her siege engineers, who decide to join the company for a tour or two. When they arrive outside the capital, though, Dunya abdicates the throne to Makhem, her mumbling squire, and instead joins the company to stay with Umber. Before they can leave Khûm, however, they receive a message by howling wargs. Throka Thrak, an ancient Orcish warlord, and Umber's father, calls for the menagerie's aid. And that's where we are. Thank you to everyone for bearing with me. It's not so easy to cram 35 sessions of D&D into a short recap like this. Future episodes, as I say, will be much shorter than this. We'll feature more analysis and a lot more details about the individual characters and their personal arcs. But my question for you is, who is your favorite mercenary so far? Leave a comment below, and also let me know what you think of the show coming back. It's been a couple of years since I've done this. I've got a new camera, I've got a new setup, and I'm excited to be back kind of recapping my campaign for you here on YouTube. Please, if you haven't already, hit the red subscribe button and the little bell, so that way you get notified when new videos go live. Those videos are made possible by my Patreon, the links to which you can find below in the description. But until then, thank you so much for watching. It's good to be back, and as always, happy adventuring. Oh, I should probably explain. So there's this inside joke in the campaign that since the menagerie is set sort of in Ondune's like Iron Age, that the company actually originated the gesture of the middle finger. In their time, it's like a salute, meaning, victory, but they use it so much to taunt their enemies that over the centuries, it kind of becomes just like a rude insult to gesture at people. So whenever we end the session, we always like, thanks for playing, everybody, we flick each other off. So do it with me, because you're now officially a member of the menagerie.